Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Ken Bushu, or Ken for short, and welcome to my Season 1 tier list discussion video. I'm currently an S rank tentacle player, achieves solo, A3 on damage, and A2 on tank, though I plan to climb to S on every roll. These rankings are based on several factors, such as personal observations, my own experience, discussions on Reddit, Discord, YouTube, and overall research. We also need to look at key factors of what makes a character good, such as are they good solo? Are they good in a stack? Are they good early game? Are they good late game? Do they have a good ultimate or super? Are they DPS, damage per second, or are they burst damage? Do they have good boss clear or boss secure? Do they have good overall team presence? Are they good at scoring with Gekishin burst? And do they have viable skills? Based on all these factors, we'll be looking at the characters in Season 1 of Gekishin Squadra. So let's get started. So we will just be going in order of what we have presented here. And the first character shown is Super Saiyan Goku, the face of the franchise. I didn't really change the rankings here, but I'm sure it's fine how it is. Z is clearly going to be the best, D the worst, and for Super Saiyan Goku, maybe to no surprise, I'm going to put him in the Z tier. Now, let me explain. Super Saiyan Goku has good clear. He has Kamehameha, which is massive burst damage. That's his skill 1. His skill 2 also does massive damage. His skill 3, Kaioken, gives him several buffs: attack, movement speed, and defense. And also it increases the damage of his skill 1 and skill 2. He also has a very strong ultimate or super attack, Spirit Bomb, which can be used to secure bosses and later in the game be used both offensively and defensively. And it gets stronger the more allies you have alive. He's such a powerhouse of a character. He's extremely strong. If you get ahead with him, it's a problem for your opponents. And if you're fighting him, you have to constantly be worried about getting hit in the face with a Kamehameha or your team grouping together. Because if your team groups together, he just gets to do a ton of damage all at once, and all his damage comes out extremely quickly. So for those reasons, Super Saiyan Goku is in the Z tier, the toppest of tiers. Now, the next character is Piccolo, another damage character, and he received buffs in Season 1. His light grenade went from 20 seconds to 15 seconds. And his special beam cannon, his super, went from charging from 4 full seconds to 3 seconds instead. Many people believe that Piccolo's buffs were undeserved, that he was already a strong character. And I do believe he is strong in the right hands. However, considering that he is more of a damage per second character, and all his bursts comes from light grenade, which is 15 seconds, and special beam cannon, which takes several seconds to charge, I'm currently going to put him in B tier. I do believe if you have a good Piccolo and a good team, that Piccolo is a problem. However, Because Piccolo is so team reliant and less bursty than other characters, I believe he will be in the middle of the pack, which is not bad. He's not a bad character at all. Again, when you play him right or you have the right team that supports him, then Piccolo is a problem. But I do not feel that Piccolo can solo carry games. Super Saiyan Goku can easily solo carry games. However, Piccolo requires a lot more team support and quote-unquote brain power to really do well. Next on the list we have First Form Frieza, my personal go-to technical character. So there may be some bias here, but I'm going to put Frieza in A tier. I believe Frieza is one of the best, if not the best, technical characters in the game. He does good damage with his recent buffs to his Skill 1, Zarbon. Skill 2, Dodoria got a slight damage increase. And Skill 3 also got a buff, which pretty much makes his other summons just stronger overall. He has good boss clear, probably one of the best boss clears in the game, solo. On top of that, he has a very strong ultimate at levels 2 and 3. And if you play him right, he can hold down a tower or god of destruction. Defensively, he can help your team score by putting Zarbon or Dodoria on the offensive god, so the opponents can't do much. His skill 3 can help your teammate escape or help you go in. He can easily build snowball stacks. He's a support, or my bad, a technical character that can do pretty much everything that you would ever need. And in solo queue, he is very, very strong. I would not put him in S, mostly because if you destroy his summons, Skill 1 or Skill 2, then he pretty much doesn't do that much damage. He's also squishy, however, this is circumnavigated by the fact that he's probably the fastest character in the game. His passive makes him stronger, and he's also able to eat at least one hit of damage every few seconds with his Royal Decree passive. It's just his summons can easily be blown up late game if the game is even, or if it's a match where it has Super Start. If it is a Super Start game, Zarbon and Dodoria are both very strong off the bat. However, if your opponents have a Super Saiyan Goku, a Super Saiyan 3 Goku, even Gohan or Trunks, then your summons can die extremely quickly. As the name suggests, he is a technical character, and you have to know how to use him to do well with him. Next up, we have Baby Young Body, a tank character, and to be honest, in my opinion, I think Baby is very fun. He's very strong if your team knows what they're doing. However, in a solo climb, he's a lot more difficult to use than every other tank in the game. So I will have to put him in D rank. He has his skill 1, which is extremely strong and fast. It can knock opponents away or knock them into your team. And it has 2 charges. His skill 1 is an AoE slow, which debuffs your opponents and is fairly large once maxed out. And his skill 3 allows you to give your ally lifesteal and then also regain your health. His ultimate also does fairly good damage and makes him tanky. Now the reason I put Baby in D tier is because even though his kit overall is strong, if you were to be playing in solo, not with friends, not in a pre-made or a stack, you are essentially down to 2 skills most of the time. There are several people that do not fully understand how Baby works. And there are people that will run away from any sign of danger. If you use your skill 3 or want to use your skill 3 and no one's nearby you pretty much are down 1 whole ability and you'll die. Mind you, if you're by yourself over and over, that may be your fault. However, again, if you have teammates that do not fully understand how Baby works, like you enter their body with skill 3 and they just choose to run away because it suddenly became a 1v2 or a 1v1 and they're just nervous, then Baby doesn't really do that much. Baby as a character, his lifesteal is very strong, but again, in solo play, he is a lot more weaker because he relies so much on allies, and the random factor in solo queue is a problem. And for those reasons, Baby will have to be placed in the D tier. Next up, we have Zamasu, another tank, and personally, I will put Zamasu in C tier. Now, as a tank, Zamasu is not very strong. And when I say tank, when I think of a tank, I mean someone that has CC or crowd control, such as stuns, slows, suppression. And Zamasu, he has 2 slows. One of them on his skill 1, and then one on his ultimate. He also has a knockback ability, which is also another form of CC or crowd control. However, I feel that his skill 2 is one of the weakest abilities in the game. And it does him no favors. It barely does any damage. If you use it to knock opponents away, then you pretty much are putting yourself in a position where your team can't do much. And if you do it to knock opponents into your team, unless they're at the end point of where you would knock them into, you might be soloing the opponent unless you just get really good slows on them. Not only that, his skill 2 has a very long startup, and it requires several points into it, I would say even 3 points, for it to be a fairly decent ability. Slows are also one of the weakest forms of CC. Sure, he has a fairly strong slow with his ultimate, but it isn't that good until you reach skill 3, arguably level 2. And his skill 1, though reaches far, is fairly slow. Zamasu, as a tank, his main draw is that he has regeneration. He has 2 lives if you manage his passive, and he actually does fairly decent damage. The thing is, all his damage comes from his skill 3, and it's a dot or a damage over time. I do believe Zamasu is a fairly decent tank when you play around the fact that he is more of a nuisance that builds damage over time, and if you fully utilize his ultimate to make plays. Another thing is, if you max his skill 3 and skill 1 and skip putting a point in skill set at level 7 and instead put a point in level 8 into his skill 3 and ultimate, then he gets a very strong power spike around level 8 that makes his skill 3 do massive damage. I've also heard that you can try to build around his skill 2 and do more back caps, which is fairly interesting, and I've tried a few times, but there are other characters that do this fairly easier, and if your opponent realizes you're doing this, you pretty much fall off very easily. However, it is something to consider. Next, we'll be looking at Super Oob, a damage character who does damage per second, and for that I will put Oob in B tier. Like Piccolo, he does damage per second, and his ultimate does a ton of burst damage. However, unlike Piccolo, he only has one charge of his ultimate, while Piccolo has 2 to 3. Piccolo is also able to take out bosses from essentially half health throughout the entire game, and I believe Oob's ultimate is better used to take down opponents since it only has one charge. However, if you really need it, you can use it to secure bosses. Oob's ultimate, or super, also has a secondary effect where it suppresses an enemy and turns them into a form of candy, which is fairly useful. And Oob also has a ton of movement abilities, allowing him to weave in and out of the match or battles. All this being said, you could arguably say that Oob is maybe stronger than Piccolo when it comes to damage. However, I believe Piccolo's ultimate makes him more useful than Oob overall. I have seen several good Oob players that can carry games. However, Oob's skill cap overall seems to make him less desirable on a team composition. I also feel that Oob probably has some issues when it comes to the game's overall settings. If you go into the game settings, you could probably change the targeting to make it easier to attack with him. Because if you do not change your settings, you will probably end up attacking NPCs or minions and other random things. And it's important to get your attack straight with Oob. Alright, next up in the tier list we have Krillin, another technical character. One of the first ones you unlock. And so I will place Krillin in A tier. Now, Krillin is a fairly strong character. When the game first came out, I wasn't feeling him too much, but that's because I played him so much in the beta, and he was so strong in the beta. They nerfed his mines by a lot of damage, and the 1 second nerf to his skill 1, the mines, made it so that they weren't as spammable. It actually was a fairly strong change that made him do less damage overall. However, after some discussion with other players and facing him several times on my rank climb, I have decided that he is still a very strong character if you build him correctly. His strengths are he does a lot of blinding. He obscures your vision a lot, and he's good at defending certain points on the map. He can defend gods, he can defend bushes, defend entry points, and if you max out Scattershot, he can pretty much stop an entire area from being utilized. He also counters Kale, funny enough, when she uses her ultimate, which is pretty wild. An entire character that just counters another character is pretty interesting. He can easily get snowball stacks. He plays from the back. He does good damage. The only thing that kind of is bad with Krillin is that if you think you know where his mine is going to be, it's probably going to be there. There's not a lot of places that he can place his mines. Well, there is, but it's like, you know it's going to be on the god, so just use a skill on the god and then walk in there. If you think there's going to be a mine in the bush, use an ability in the bush and you'll delete it. It's easy to remove his mines, but if you're not careful, he can easily blow you up and gain stacks on his snowball. His ultimate is also fairly strong, as once you are marked, it can follow you and it does a good amount of damage. And something that I've learned is that if you use the shoe helper, it will mark anyone in his range. So that makes it much easier to utilize his passive, thus reducing his cooldown and making it so that your ultimate can hit your opponent much easier. Next up, we have Deborah, the Demon King. Now, Deborah is a fairly fun character with a unique ability to petrify your opponent, basically a form of stunning and suppression, and when they are petrified, they take a ton of damage. His skill 2 makes it so that your opponents cannot use vanish steps in it, gives him movement speed, and his skill 1 does a ton of damage. All that being said, I will have to put Deborah in D tier. Out of all the damages in the game, Deborah is sadly one of the least desirable to see. He has many strong attributes and factors that make him seem strong. He can stun people. He can stop them from vanish stepping. He does good damage. He basically wins most tank matchups since most tanks are melee. If you pair him with Baby, he becomes a monster. Or even Gohan. All that being said, he is melee through and through. He doesn't have good range attacks. His flamethrower barely does anything. If you use your ultimate, it applies a ton of petrification meter. However, if your opponent would vanish step, they lose a ton of petrification. Maybe you can utilize this to bait vanish steps. However, that requires a lot of coordination, and it's a lot easier to land his ultimate once it's in 3 points. However, before that, it's a lot more difficult to land. In Superstar, he becomes a lot stronger as you can put all the points into his skill 2, the spears, so that they stop using vanish steps. However, in Superstar, you'll be facing Goku's, Gohan's, maybe Kale's. He is strong in Superstar, but so are many other characters. At the start of the game, he can be strong, and if you can build up enough dominance, he can be a problem to your opponents. However, if the game is even, you have to work a lot harder to be successful with the Bora than you do with many other of the damaged characters. And for those reasons, I will have to keep the Bora in D tier. Next up, we have Majin Buu Good, a technical character and one of the few characters in the game, besides Baby, who can heal your allies. Now, this is a character that many love, and while he was very strong in the beta, to my recollection, however, it seems that he is much weaker on live. Even in Season 0, he got a nerf on his skill 3, his ram attack. Before, it used to basically silence your opponents when you would ram into them, but now they're able to use skills when you hit them. Buu is also one of the squishier characters in the game. Maybe squishier than Frieza. I believe Frieza might be more squishy, but Majin Buu is definitely squishy. And that makes sense. He has a heal. When he utilizes his heal, he gains some health back. However, even at max points, I feel that his heal is fairly weak. Even when you build 2 to 3 defensive cards on him, he can still take a ton of damage. And because he is team reliant, it is not a good look. All that being said, I will have to put Majin Buu in C tier. I believe Majin Buu is a fairly decent character. He is somewhat team reliant. However, if you were to play him with brawlers or to hug your tanks, he becomes much stronger. Sure, he is team reliant, but his skill 3 is fairly strong. His skill 1 is strong, and once you get max level on his ultimate, it gives a large AoE field and pretty much a team-wide suppression. His main faults are he does not heal that well. He does heal, but it's not that strong, but it is AoE, which is good. He has a very strong CC, and he actually does pretty decent damage on his skill 3. Plus, him being technical makes him, by default, fairly fast. All the technicals in this game are very fast characters, and if you were to build some blue cards on him, it would lower his cooldowns, which is very strong. Next up, we have Android 18, a damaged character similar to an assassin, and let's see, she is melee. She has a ranged attack. Her ultimate can pretty much delete people. She has a dash attack that resets and does a ton of damage. She's fairly strong, and many people sleep on this character. Mostly because to unlock her free to play, you have to choose between her, hit, or sell. She also has I would say, a fairly decent skill ceiling, as you would need to know where to dash, when to use your abilities, what to do against certain opponents, etc., etc. All that being said, I will put Android 18 in A tier. She's a fairly strong damage character who is good early, good late. Sure, she's melee, but her Destructo Disc allows her to do fairly good damage at range. She can always pick off opponents at any point of the game. The only things you really have to worry about is Solid Barrier. If you see Solid Barrier, try to poke it out with your Destructo Disc and then wait it out. Once it's done, you can nuke that opponent easily. And I also believe that she's countered by Cooler's skill 2, which stops movement speed abilities. Next up, we have Super Saiyan Caulifla, or Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla, a tank who has a passive called Provoked, to my recollection. And what Provoke does is when you hit someone with Provoke, not only do you take less damage from that character, you also do more damage to them, which allows her to be very tanky. Her skill 1 allows you to apply Provoked in a cone area, and at higher levels gets fairly big. Her skill 2 is a projectile mine that, when thrown onto an opponent, allows you to zip to them and does fairly good damage. And her skill 3 is a cone around herself that pretty much creates a shield and nullifies any damage for its duration, and afterward gives her a large movement speed boost. Her ultimate also shoots out several beams, which apply her passive and does fairly decent damage. All that being said, Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla, I would say, belongs in S tier. She is an extremely strong tank who can be built defensively and offensively because of her passive. She can easily take down opponents, tank teams, doing 2v1s, sometimes even 3v1s if you're ahead. Her ultimate does fairly good damage. However, if you build her full damage, then her ultimate can actually melt opponents. She is an extremely strong tank that you can easily carry lanes and your games with her. I highly recommend playing Caulifla if you're trying to rise up in the tanks. And she's fairly fun to me. Next up, we have Cooler Final Form, another tank, and arguably one of the best in the game. His skill 1 does a beam attack with a 3-second cooldown. His skill 2 does a area that applies a slow and high pressure, which makes it so that your opponents cannot do vanish steps or, to my knowledge, dashes. And his skill 3 is a lunge, which goes through opponents, and he has a passive that I forgot to mention. When he uses his skills, if he were to take damage when using his skill, then his next skill will be enhanced as long as he has his passive active. His skill 1 gains a burn effect. His skill 2 becomes much wider in range. and his skill 3, the lunge, grabs the opponent and slams them behind him, and also adds an AoE slow to wherever he knocked them down. His ultimate is a supernova, which hits a wide area, and when is enhanced, hits an even wider area and does even better damage. Now, Cooler, I feel, can be built both defensively, offensively, or a mix of the two. He's a fairly versatile character who does a ton of damage while actually being able to straight up negate damage. And all that being said, I will put Cooler in S tier. Now, I do believe Cooler is fairly strong. One of the strongest characters in the game. And again, arguably one of the strongest tanks in the game. He does require some skill. Sure, you could mash your keyboard or your controller or whatever have you and just throw all his abilities. But you need to know when to use your abilities to truly negate the most damage so that you do not take a ton of damage. All his defense is from his passive, which means you have to constantly weave his abilities back and forth to not die. When compared to Caulifla, I believe overall he is stronger than Caulifla. However, I believe Caulifla personally is a lot easier to climb with, as she can straight up reduce damage just with her passive without really giving it much thought, while Cooler requires a lot more thought. It's like you get hit with a beam, you better use your special during your beam. If you saved your special or you used it beforehand and they hit you afterward, then you pretty much you ate a ton of damage. You didn't have any defensive ability. But he is still an S tier tank, and I believe on par, if not better than Caulifla. They're pretty much interchangeable. Next up, we have Full Power Bojack, another controversial character and, well, a full damage character. He has a beam attack, not really a beam, it's more like a projectile that's fairly fast and does good damage once maxed out. He has mines, which pretty much detonate using his skill 1. His skill 3 is a large circle that applies a slow, and his ultimate, it does damage in a wide area which converges onto a single spot. He also has a passive where whenever he uses the ability and does a strike or auto attack onto the opponent, it summons one of his squad members to do some extra damage. Now, the thing with Bojack is that it takes a long time for him to come online. When compared to other damage characters such as Goku Super Saiyan, Android 18, or even Piccolo, he is not an early game character. It takes him till he transforms to become fairly decent. And even then, I would say his power spike really hits at level 8, maybe even level 9. In a game that can be determined fairly early, it is tough to really say pick Bojack. If he gets jumped, he can't really do much. He has no movement abilities. His skill 2 comes out extremely slow. It doesn't even detonate until like a certain amount of time passes. His ultimate locks him in place, and you can literally walk around it or out of it and then start attacking him. It's mainly good for burning down bosses or possibly defending your tower or pushing a tower. All that being said, I believe Bojack to belong in C tier. Bojack is a slow character that takes time to become powerful. However, once he does reach his power spike, and if you do not feed on him early, then he is actually a fairly powerful character. He has a lot of area denial, and if you focus on his skill 1 and 2 and ignore skill 3 as long as you can, basically do not put a point into it at skill 7, at level 7, and focus on his skill 2 and 1, then he actually is fairly powerful. The problem is you have to get snowball stacks, and if your team does poorly overall, you're going to have a bad time. However, the longer the game goes, the stronger Bojack becomes. His aerial denial is no joke. He can defend and push fairly well, but he is a lot more team dependent than the other damage characters. All that being said, I do believe he's fairly decent, and I will keep him in C tier. Next up, we have Son Gohan Kid, another technical character, one that people believe is one of the strongest characters in the game. He has a beam for his skill 1, a very strong stun/silence on his skill 2, a buff/debuff on his skill 3, which increases strike damage or strike resist to my knowledge. My bad. His passive makes him tankier while also making an ally that he's linked to do more damage overall. And his ultimate increases damage around him while also applying a stun to anyone who he hits. It's two parts to his ultimate / super. Being technical, he's fairly fast. You can backdoor or backcap points with him. You can support your teammates. If your team notices that you get a stun, then they can delete the character that you stun. He does fairly good damage. If I remember correctly, he applies a debuff with his auto attacks, his strike damage. He is a fairly strong character, arguably one of the strongest techs in the game. And for all that, I will put him in A tier. Now, I did say that he is one of the strongest tacticals in the game. However, from personal experience, if your team does not really play along with you, he does lose out on some power. He is a strong character. He is strong on his own, but because he has a passive that is beneficial if you have a team, and a skill 3 that's stronger with a team, if you do not have teammates that are good, then it becomes a lot more difficult to really do well with Son Gohan. Next up, we have Super Saiyan Trunks Teen, a melee character who has a somewhat weaker early game, but becomes a beast later on. He has Burn Attack, which applies a blind in the area that he throws it, a Leap that allows him to get to opponents, and a Stab or Thrust that allows him to execute opponents. His ultimate also does a ton of damage, and at later levels can hit a fairly wide area. Now, I've seen many Trunks players. I've played with some, I've faced some, and for a damage character, I do not mind seeing him on my teams. However, it's a lot easier to fail with Trunks than to succeed with him. Again, because he has a fairly weak early game. Unless you make it out of that early game, you're going to struggle. And even later on in the game, he may have some trouble. However, his skill that executes is fairly good to help secure bosses, at least early bosses, secure Kais, and later on is very far-reaching and help him secure KOs on your opponents. So with all that being said, I'm going to put Trunks in B tier. He's definitely in the middle of the pack, a fairly decent character who can do well. However, it's also easy to not do well with him. I believe he requires some skill, and well, luckily he has a transformation. And transformations are pretty huge since they give major power spikes. Next up, we have Super Saiyan Vegeta, a tank. His skill 1 is his signature move, shooting out a ton of Ki Blast. His skill 2 is an AoE field that pretty much locks people in. However, they are able to vanish step out of it. But at later levels, encompasses a huge area and does a lot of tick damage. And his skill 3, Explosive Wave, knocks people off of him and gives him health. His skill 1 also gives him health back, or armor, when he hits opponents with it. His ultimate, Big Bang Attack, also covers a large area and also gives him armor when hitting opponents. As a tank, he has a lot of good CC on his skill 2 and skill 3. It's not hard CC, but basically is lockdown and also area denial. He's fairly good at defending your god from your opponents, and it's very difficult to take down a Vegeta. He's a very tanky character, and his passive, when he is down a certain health threshold, his cooldowns come back faster. So he's able to stay tankier if you keep hitting your opponents. All that being said, I will have to put Super Saiyan Vegeta in C tier. Now, right now, I'm not really ordering these characters in best to worst in their rank. Like, I don't believe Vegeta is like worse than Bojack, or I'm just putting him here right now. Anyway, as a tank, Vegeta is fairly decent. He has some good CC or crowd control. However, he does not do that much damage. If you build him full damage, you pretty much lose out on some tankiness. And even if you do build him full damage, I just don't feel that he does that much damage. Zamasu does more damage than him, but Vegeta has better tank abilities. Caulifla and Cooler are both tanky and can do damage. They can be built tanky, or they could be built with damage cards. With Vegeta, you mostly want to build him tank. You could build him damage, but then honestly, he could probably be built damage, but he just doesn't do that much damage. Even with damage cards, he just doesn't do that much damage. His ultimate, even though it takes a wide area at skill level 3, it just isn't that good of an ability. He's mainly good at defending and catching opponents off guard. But for damage, he's not doing that much. So for that, I will have to keep him in C tier. Next up, we have Son Goku Mini. You could call him Miniku. You could call him Daimaku. Whatever you want to call him. Mini Goku is another controversial character. When the game first came out, many people didn't really understand how to play him. They said he was one of the worst damage characters in the game, if not one of the worst characters in the game. They recently buffed his rush attack, and it was a very significant buff, in my opinion. He actually does pretty decent damage with it. And now that people have taken their time to learn him, we can see what he's all about. His skill 1 applies a dot or damage over time, and it can catch people off guard. Once it's maxed out, it does fairly good damage. His skill 2 hits several opponents with a lightning strike and can detonate his skill 1, his main combo. His skill 3 is pretty much a parry. It doesn't return damage, however, it does help negate damage. I've once used it to actually survive against a spirit bomb, which is fairly impressive for a damaged character. And his ultimate does a ton of damage, more damage the further you're away from your opponent, and is supposed to actually get stronger if he receives damage during the ultimate. So all that being said, I believe that Son Goku Mini belongs in B tier. Son Goku Mini actually does fairly decent damage. If he is ahead, he does a ton of damage, actually able to one-shot some characters. His dot is fairly annoying, and his tankiness makes him very good. All that being said, his strike damage is still underwhelming. Once you use his skill 1 and skill 2 combo, you pretty much don't really do much for the rest of the battle. His ultimate, even though says it gives him it's supposed to make it so he's like immune to damage. I've still taken damage when using it, which could be my fault, but I also feel it's just finicky. When he has cooldowns, he doesn't really do that much. His strike damage, it gets bigger the more he uses it. However, if you stop attacking something for a second, or you summon a helper while you're attacking somebody, or you use a vanish step while attacking, his auto attack range resets, and then you have to start all over again. it doesn't fall off a little bit, it completely resets. This is a character that wants to do damage over time, and he's fairly good at it in lane. However, once you reach team fight phase, he starts to fall off fairly quickly. Even when you are ahead, once your opponent starts catching up, Goku Mini starts falling off very quickly. So all that being said, I will keep Goku Mini in B tier. He's much better than people give him credit for, but he's not the best. I would say, without a doubt, the weakest of the Gokus in the game so far. Next up, we have Cell Perfect Form, and, well, let's go over him. He is a tank that starts off in his imperfect form. He has a passive where when he attacks enemies that are like half health, including minions or NPCs, he will drain them. And once he reaches full meter, then he's able to transform. Now, this is unique, as every other character besides Super Saiyan 3 Goku is able to transform at, well, Super Saiyan 3 Goku can also transform at level 7. However, Cell is able to transform before level 7 if you build up his meter quickly enough. Once Cell transforms, he becomes a fairly strong character with very good CC and is able to sing out your opponents over and over. However, before he reaches perfect form, he is arguably not a very good character. He's very weak. He has no tankiness. It's very easy to shut down a Cell when they're in imperfect form. If you deny him of farming, you pretty much deny him of his passive, which prolongs his transformation, which means you can keep him in imperfect form for much longer. But once he reaches perfect form, he becomes a monster. His ultimate becomes very useful. At level 3, his ultimate encompasses a large area, and if he ever does activate his ultimate, he creates a ring which him and his allies can damage an opponent in, but whoever is outside of the ring cannot really do damage. So if you're in the ring, say you lock down, I don't know, an opponent Gohan or something, you'll be boxing Gohan, and the opponent Goku will do Kamehameha or whatever. It doesn't matter. If he's outside the ring, then he'll do no damage. Cell does fairly decent damage. However, his backbreaker is his main draw. You can use it over and over, and you can loop it with Big Bang Crash to whittle down an opponent. If anyone is ever by themselves, they're pretty much gone, and Cell can just keep looping it over and over. All that being said, I will put Cell in B tier. Cell's drawbacks are what hold him back. He has weak early game, but he becomes a fairly decent character, if not strong character, later on. In solo play, he's definitely more of a coin flip, and I believe in Superstar, it's kind of detrimental to pick Cell. Even in EX Golden Cell Juniors, he's also detrimental, as if you do not get the cells, the EX cells on your side, you are in trouble. And even if you do get them, there's no guarantee that you will be able to secure them, like Cauliflower or Cooler. Next up, we have Android 17, a technical character. He is fairly unique. He has a beam attack, not a beam, well, a projectile on his skill 1. He has a stun/dash on his skill 2, and he has a shield that provides pseudo health on his skill 3. His ultimate also provides a shield for your team that also applies damage to anyone in it, or the opponents. He has a passive where his strikes stop opponents from transforming as long as he's attacking them. And his skills 1 through 3 also have extra attributes. His skill 1, when his passive is up, allows him to cast it a second time and also reverse any buffs, turn them into debuffs, such as if your opponent would get a movement speed buff, it would turn into a movement speed slow. His skill 2, his dash, turns into a stun when used a second time, and his shield can be cast a second time and gives a movement speed buff. 17 is an interesting character, as I feel he could be built multiple ways. You could focus on his skill 1 and do a lot of damage. You can focus on skill 3 and tank for your team. You can focus on skill 2 and support your team by letting them get kills off stunning opponents. You could build damage cards on him, you could build tanky cards on him, you could focus on skill 1, you could focus on his strike damage, you can make him tanky, you can make him fast. He's a very versatile character, and I feel that he's fairly good. All that being said, I'll have to put Android 17 in A tier. Now, he is able to do a lot. However, I do not feel that he is the best at anything, really. He has a stun, but it doesn't really do that much damage. Gohan, I feel, has a better stun. His skill 1 does very good damage. It's actually one of the strongest moves in his kit. However, I feel that Krillin does fairly better damage as a technical character. His shield is pretty decent, his skill 3. However, I feel it doesn't last long enough. It feels like it lasts maybe 2 seconds. If it lasted 1 more second, I felt like it would be a lot better. And his ultimate does not give that much shield. It does fairly good damage, but as a character overall, Android 17 is more team reliant than, say, Frieza or Krillin, or even Gohan. Even though Gohan has like an ability that can only be used with another ally, and his passive works with an ally, I still think that Gohan is more useful than Android 17. Or, let's say, more dangerous. 17 is definitely more team reliant. However, you could argue that he is better than Gohan at least. Next up, we have Hit, another technical character and a controversial one. His skill 1 is a projectile that applies his passive when he's unseen. It's fairly good, reaches long range, and can be used to snipe things such as Kai's or NPC farm in the early game. His skill 2 is a point and click punch when invisible applies a stun, and once it has 2 points in it, is in a cone shape. Whoever's in that cone also can get stunned. And then his skill 3 is his bread and butter. He turns invisible and does a blink. Blink as in he goes from one point to another. It's kind of like Vanish Step, but it goes even further. I believe it also gives him some movement speed. And his ultimate blinds the opponent, the whole opponent team, or whoever's in his radius. At level 2 and 3, it hits fairly far and basically applies his passive to everyone, which means you can get easy stuns with skill 2, and you can apply stacks with his stuns with skill 1. Now, Hit he's a fun character, but maybe he's more fun to play than to play against. Once you have a Hit in your game, you have to play completely different. You always have to worry about people scoring on your gods. However, once Hit is in the game, it feels like the game becomes a 3v4 sometimes. As if you do not have someone protecting your god, Hit can go on it, get a cheeky score, and then, well, the main way you win is to damage the god, so he is one of the best characters to do it. Not only because he can go invisible, but because he is a technical. He is fairly fast, and his skill 3 allows him to get out of danger fairly well, at least at later levels. His ultimate is also fairly powerful, and he does pretty well damage once you play with your allies. He also is very strong in the god draw with the clouds, as he does a ton of damage in lane with the clouds. And if you have the Spirited Away, where it puts the grass on the gods, then he can score even better. All that being said, I will put Hit in A tier. Hit is a fairly strong character. He pretty much warps the game once he's in it. If you want to counter him, you actually have to run Shu or play certain characters like Krillin, Frieza, Vegeta. If you're just worried about him being on your turret, you have to sit on it for who knows how long, and sometimes just throw abilities at it. He is such a nuisance, and if he plays well and knows that you're just guarding it, your team can utilize that and pretty much force uneven fights. All that being said, if your team is silly, if they don't really utilize the fact that they're down, if the opponents are down one player, or even two, if your team doesn't jump the same characters that you jump and utilize your stuns, or if the opponents have a ton of AoE, say they have Goku or Cooler or anything else, a ton of AoE damage, the later team fights, he becomes a lot more difficult to use. So for all those reasons, I will put him in A tier. Next up, we have Gamma 1 and 2, a damaged character with a very unique ability. They have two different health bars and switch between them when utilizing your skill 1 and skill 2. Skill 1 does 3 dash attacks, similar to 18, however it does not go through opponents, but stops at them. Your skill 2 does an AoE stomp attack, and at later levels does more damage, and your skill 3 is a gun that shoots in a cone. All these abilities are enhanced once you use your ultimate. when you use your ultimate or super, you combine your health bars and then you do more damage. Your skill 1 in ultimate gives you health or shield health. Your skill 2 becomes even bigger, doing better damage, and your skill 3 also just straight up does more damage. The ultimate also, when used, initially applies a stun. Now, the thing with the gammas is they are fairly unique. When you start the game, or when you use skill 2, you're playing as Gamma 2, who is a ranged attacker. But when you use skill 1, you become a melee attacker. They also have 2 health bars, and if you were to lose one of your gammas, you would have to go back to your base or use your ultimate to get the gamma back. Also, at level 11, if we were to put 3 points into his ultimate, then he gains a new attack where he can blow up, I forget which gamma, I believe Gamma 2, and you blow up Gamma 1, the core breaker, and it does a ton of damage. Pretty much, it's able to take out half the health of the final bosses. And it hits in a massive area. All that being said, I believe that the gammas are in B tier. They do fairly good damage. However, because they are melee characters, essentially with their skills, they are a lot weaker than other characters. They are pretty much DPS or damage per second type characters. The stun on the ultimate is fairly negligible. Sure, it does stun, but by the time you get out of it, you pretty much are only able to land maybe one ability. Them sharing or having different health bars is a lot to manage, and later on can be detrimental. And the fact that it takes you to wait till level 11 or your ultimate to gain a new property that you can only use once per match is not amazing. Sure, there are a lot of characters that have their ultimates become stronger at level 3. However, the gammas, the core breaker mechanic is just not that good. I feel that it could be buffed. Like, it could activate a little sooner and it wouldn't be a big issue. If the gammas had a little more health or did a little more damage, that'd be better characters overall. They're not bad characters, which is why I put them in B, but I definitely feel they are at the lower end of B. They're not terrible characters at all, but not amazing either. Alright, now we have Super Saiyan Kale Berserk, a fairly strong character. Her passive makes it so that her auto attacks are stronger when nearby an ally. Her skill 1 throws out orbs that do fairly decent damage. Her skill 2 throws out a beam in a line. And her skill 3 throws out an orb that travels slowly. However, when paired with skill 1 and 2, has different properties. When paired with skill 1, does a ton of damage, which is their main combo. And when paired with skill 2, sends out a line in a horizontal way. Her ultimate turns her into Berserk form, gives her a ton of health, and makes her strike attacks do very good damage. She's able to chase down opponents while in Berserk mode and gains a ton of health. KO is a fairly strong character when you get ahead, has a good time staying ahead. She is able to one-shot several characters, and I feel plays very well off your opponent's misinputs or misplays. All that being said, I will have to put KO in A tier. KO is a fairly strong character. She does a ton of damage. However, if your skill 1 and skill 3 are on cooldown, you just have to wait for you to be able to do more damage again. Now, it's fairly easy to get kills with her, as if you have your opponents focusing on one ally like a tank, you're able to utilize your abilities and hit them fairly easily. If you are being chased, you can throw out your skill 3 and skill 1 and get some easy damage or kills. However, if you were to jump her, if she doesn't have her ultimate, it's a lot easier to get rid of her. And once she loses stall ball stacks, she becomes a lot weaker. Another thing is, her ultimate has a fairly long cooldown. When you're in your ultimate, you cannot damage gods. And her ultimate also pretty much has a balance to it. Sure, you're able to get 2, maybe 3 kills with it if your opponents misplay or acting silly, but it can be countered by blinds like Krillin. And if you get a kill with a melee attack, you enter a animation. So basically, even at her max level, you could maybe get 3 kills solo if your opponent's miss slightly. Because once you get a melee kill or KO, you enter an animation, and then you have to wait till you get out of the animation to start attacking again. And while you're in that animation, your opponents can set up. Maybe they can put like some beams on you or something else. And I'm not sure about this, but I believe that if you lose all your health or pseudo health, like the berserk health you use when you use your ultimate, then you may de-transform and then become regular KO. I may be wrong about that one. And finally, we have Super Saiyan Son Goku. Well, Super Saiyan 3 Son Goku, the latest character to Gekishin Squadra. Now, this is a controversial character currently. Some people believe that he's quote-unquote pay to win, as currently the only way to obtain him is to spend real money, and you have to wait an entire season to unlock him for free. His skill 1 is Super Kamehameha, a beam that can be charged and does an initial burst of damage and also does damage over time. And unique to the Kamehameha, is able to be turned and reaches fairly far. I've heard is one of the farthest reaching attacks in the game. I'm not sure if it reaches farther than Special Beam Cannon, but it does reach fairly far. His skill 2 is a dive attack, which has a property that's supposed to do more damage to characters that are lower health, and if you input it again, then it can send you back to the same place that you activated it. So he could go in and out with the same ability. And then his skill 3, Instant Transmission, allows him to teleport to either an ally or an opponent. And if you were to use Kamehameha after use Instant Transmission, then it is fully charged and does its full damage in full duration. His ultimate, Dragon Fist, can only be unlocked once you reach level 7. And once you do, it is an attack that, well, first you have to transform to even unlock it. And when you use it, it is a burst of damage in a line that melts tanks, melts every character. It does fairly good damage. At early levels, it's fairly small range. Well, it reaches long horizontally, but it's not very wide. And he has a passive where if he is attacking opponents with higher health percentage than him, then he does more damage to them. And compared to Super Saiyan Goku, he's actually a ranged character. And he has a passive also where he has a meter under him, and when that meter is filled, then he does a bonus attack that does a ton of damage. Piccolo has something similar. However, I believe Piccolo does it after every fourth attack. There's no meter management involved with Piccolo. Now, Super Saiyan 3 Goku is a fairly strong character. His Kamehameha is pretty oppressive, and even though it does more damage over time than Burst, the initial hit does do some fairly strong burst damage. His skill 2 gives him a ton of mobility, and his skill 3 gives him even more mobility, allowing him to traverse the entire map once you have just 2 points in it. His ultimate does a ton of damage, and if you have map awareness, he becomes a monster. Map awareness, communication, whatever you say, he's able to do a lot. All that being said, I will put Super Saiyan 3 Son Goku in S tier. Now, I do believe that Super Saiyan 3 Goku is a very strong character. His Kamehameha is oppressive to fight against, especially if you have Superstar or Skill Boost 1 as God draws. His auto attacks are fairly strong. I do like that they are ranged. However, he is more of a DPS or damage per second character compared to Super Saiyan 3 Goku, who is a burst character. And I feel that burst is a lot stronger in this game than damage per second. He also has a drawback in that his ultimate or super, Dragon Fist, is only able to be unlocked once he reaches level 7 and transforms. Super Saiyan Goku is able to use his ultimate, Spirit Bomb, once he reaches level 5. And once you reach level 5, pretty much the first boss spawns around 2 minutes. You may be even level 6 by then. And you can use his Spirit Bomb to secure bosses at around half health, if not a little less than that. But it's pretty much a guaranteed secure if you have Spirit Bomb. Even at later levels, Dragon Fist does not do as much damage to bosses as a full power Spirit Bomb attack. Now that this is the complete list, we'll change things up in order. Super Saiyan Goku is definitely number 1. Kale and Cooler are pretty much next to each other. You could arguably say that Cooler is stronger than Caulifla. I personally find Caulifla stronger solo than Cooler, so I'll keep Caulifla above Cooler. Super Saiyan 3 Goku is extremely good, and I feel that you can definitely carry games with him if you have map knowledge, if you pay attention to your team, if you have the right god draws. He's a very good character. But I do not feel that he is quote-unquote pay to win. You have other characters that do fairly well and do very good damage. Even though I put Kale in A tier, you could arguably do better with Kale than Super Saiyan 3 Goku, as Kale is able to take advantage of opponents' misplays fairly easily and snowball like crazy. Super Saiyan 3, even though his auto attacks are ranged, if you do instant transmission Kamehameha and your opponent gets out the way, then he can just like blow up. If you get behind him while he's doing the Kamehameha, then he just becomes stagnant. You would have to use a vanish step to get out of your animation. And yeah, I believe Super Saiyan 3 Goku is fairly strong and belongs in the S tier, but he definitely is not the best character in the game, not like Super Saiyan Goku. Now in the A tier, personally I find Frieza to be the best tactical. Krillin is next, and when we look at these characters, I believe that Gohan is better than 18. Sure, they do different jobs, but I do believe that Gohan brings more value to a team than an 18. 17, I believe, is better than 18 as well. Like, the thing with the technicals is that because they're all so fast, they're very good at scoring on gods. And they bring a lot of value to the team overall. 18, you can do fairly well with, but she also has more trouble once the game goes on further. So she's able to do a ton of damage and still one-shot characters, but her ultimate is actually kind of finicky. I believe if you vanish step her ultimate, you can just like completely whiff it, which sucks. Like, any character that does a cone attack, I've seen it happen with Hit. I've personally felt it with Hit skill 2. You might be able to whiff the Bora's skill 1. However, like, barely anyone really does that. But I've definitely seen 18's ultimate whiff. I've experienced Hit's skill 2 whiff. So the fact that her ultimate can just like straight up whiff or miss and not register doing any damage is a huge detriment. And yeah, because she is damaged, sure, she can do well, but I believe the technicals have overall better matchup because they're just so fast and they're just very good at scoring. Hit, I believe that Hit, again, is better than 18, and I would even say that Hit is better in Android 17. Android 17 is a lot more team reliant than Hit, and even though Hit is also fairly team reliant, if you were to catch someone out of place, he can definitely one-shot someone. He can even whittle down a tank if he uses his ultimate. He does a ton of damage late game. Him being in the game pretty much turns matches into 3v4s, and you have to be on your toes whenever there is a hit, as he can whittle down the gods. However, that is not something completely unique to Hit. Sure, he can do it because he can go invisible and get some early damage on the gods. However, I've seen Gohan's, Krillin's, and Frieza's, and Android 17's just run down to the gods, do a ton of damage to them because, again, all technicals have a ton of speed, and thus it is very easy to do it with any technical. It's just he can turn invisible and turns the match into a horror game. But he is still team reliant, and early on he does not do that much damage. Even if you build damage on him, he just does not do that much damage. He has to really hit you while you have his debuff stacks, and he has to be invisible. But if the team has a ton of AoE damage, he can't really stay invisible outside of his ultimate. Kale, I believe Kale is better than Android 18. Honestly, I feel that Android 18 is stronger than Kale. However, because Kale has so much burst, He's able to take down Kais fairly easily. She plays off your opponent's mistakes far easier than Android 18. 18 is about your opponents being alone or mispositioning. Kale can easily nuke people that misposition and hit a ton of more opponents at the same time with her damage. Her ultimate is pretty much like an emergency button that also makes her a monster. However, it has a very long cooldown. I do believe that Kale is fairly decent, if not one of the best damages in the game. Like if you look at the ranking, she's pretty much top 3 damage. Let's see. Next up, we have Piccolo, sure. Oob, sure. Trunks. I believe that Cell is better than Trunks. And I even would say that Mini Goku is possibly better than Trunks. The reason I say this is because Mini Goku is stronger earlier than Trunks and can be stronger later than Trunks. Trunks is a menace. However, because he's such a combo heavy character and you pretty much have to rely on your opponents reaching low health, you would need another damage character that does a ton of damage for him to be a lot more successful. Like if you're playing Trunks with, say, Oob, you pretty much have 2 damage per second characters, and that's not really good. If you play him with Goku or the other Goku or Kale, then you're gonna have a lot easier time, as then the opponents will have to take a ton of burst, and then he can like clean up. Like 18 and Trunks are both good at cleaning up kills and possibly securing objectives. However, I just feel that Mini Goku being stronger in lane is a huge thing, and his ultimate is, I would say, arguably better than Trunks' ultimate. Cell is also very weak early, but once he transforms, becomes a very strong character. I would say he's one of the weakest tanks, but he's still very good once he becomes perfect, because the Backcracker and his ultimate are fairly strong abilities. Some of the strongest tank abilities in the game. It's just that Cell has a skill, the regeneration. Honestly, it's useful, but at the same time, it's not super useful. It makes him last in a fight longer, especially if your opponent just attacks him so he gains health back. However, if you were to play around his regeneration, he won't gain health back, and at the same time, it doesn't really do anything unless your opponent interacts with it. Like if you have an ability that depends on another player, that definitely just makes you a weaker character overall. I would still say that Gamma's is the lowest of B rank. They're definitely one of the weaker damages in the game. They're not terrible, but they're definitely weaker and probably need some buffs, I would say. Now, in the C tier, we have Zamasu, Boo, Bojack, and Vegeta. Personally, I like Zamasu. I like Zamasu more than Vegeta. But as a tank, Vegeta is a lot more useful than Zamasu. He actually has crowd control. He's actually able to help your team. He can actually defend. Zamasu's main draw is his skill 3. His skill 1 is a large slow. His ultimate is very good, but his skill 2 is pretty useless. I really feel that Zamasu's skill 2 is not good. Maybe if you completely focus on it and you just want to back cap with him, it could be useful, and maybe with some more coordination, he is good, but I just don't feel that his skill 2 is good. And because he has pretty much only 2 to 3 skills, and he has the weakest form of CC, slowing, then I just feel that he is weaker. Well, he's less useful, quote unquote useful, than Vegeta. Vegeta has better tanking capabilities and defense. However, he also does no damage. Like, Vegeta just doesn't do that much damage at all. If you prefer to do damage, Big Zamasu. His ultimate's very good. If you prefer to be a tank, like an actual tank, Big Vegeta. And then between Bojack and Boo, a good Boo is nice to have. However, you're pretty much relying on your team to be good to have a good Boo. Like, he's very team reliant. I would say more team reliant than Bojack. Bojack is not a very strong character, but he's also not terrible. It takes him a long time to become strong. I would say Bojack is better than Boo. Sure, they're different roles, but I would rather see a Bojack than a Boo. If you're good with Bojack, you can actually do something in the game. If you're a good Boo, you still need to have good teammates to really do anything with them. And then in the D tier, we have Baby and Deborah. Honestly, I would rather have Baby on my team than Deborah. Deborah's cool. Together, they're pretty good. I won't lie, but like, Baby relies so much on your teammates playing with you. Like, you could say the same thing about any tank in the game. However, his skill 3 actually relies on a teammate, just like Boo's skill 2, the heal. If you don't have a teammate that wants to play near you, his skill 3 does nothing. His ultimate does like fairly decent damage. His skill 1 is super good. One of the best beams in the game. It has large knockback, it does good damage. It can be used to secure farm. His skill 2 is pretty well. It's pretty good. His big AoE, big debuff, but again, if you don't have a team that wants to play with you or even understands what his skill 3 does, like sometimes you'll enter someone with your skill 3 and they'll just be so scared and they'll just like run away, even though like if you're attacking things and giving them lifesteal. He just doesn't really do much. And as a tank, I just feel he's not super good in solo climbing. And Deborah, you have to get really, really ahead with Deborah to do well with him. If you're playing against teams that don't play Goku, yeah, he's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, he's good. Like, you can jump Piccolo, you can jump Oob. Against Miniku is a lot more difficult. You could jump Kale. Like, he is a strong character if there's no Goku. But if there is a Goku, he plummets to the bottom of the barrel completely. And the thing is, he's a melee character. He's all melee. Sure, he has skill 3, but it's pretty much just a beam that's next to you. And then his skill 2 is a spear, which is super good. But all your damage and most of your petrification comes from your skill 1. And it still takes time to even petrify someone unless you have like the full level of your ultimate. Like, you could do your skill 1, you could do your ultimate, and then they'd be petrified, and then once they're petrified, you just have to melee them to death. Like, I don't know if there's like an optimal skill combo where you can like petrify someone and then hit them with skill 1. Because most of the time, I just do skill 1, I do skill 3, and then eventually they'll get petrified, and then skill 1 will still be on cooldown, so you just have to melee them to death. So he's pretty much just like a kind of assassin, kind of bruiser, but you don't want to build tank on him. I mean, you could build tank on him, but then if you build tank, then you do less damage, but you do a ton of damage with your petrification, but everything is damage per second. It takes too long for his ultimate to become good. his passive takes too long. Like, I feel that Deborah, I would say Deborah is like one of the worst characters in the game. Definitely, probably the worst damage in the game. And that's saying something because people do believe that Bojack is the worst. I feel that Deborah is the worst. You can actually do stuff with Bojack if you play him well. But Deborah, it's more like if the opponents are just like fumbling and then you just got to do what you want. And if they don't have Goku. If they have Goku, then he pretty much don't do anything with Deborah. He will just lose easily. Alright, all that being said, that is pretty much the solo version of the tier list. So for quote-unquote team play, like if you're in a duo or if you're in a full stack, things change up quite a bit. I would say that Cooler becomes better than Cauliflower. Super Saiyan Goku becomes better. I would say Super Saiyan Goku becomes pretty much Z tier in team fights, like with a stack, since you have communication. Krillin becomes a lot better. Gohan becomes better. Hit becomes like one of the best technicals with communication. I would say that he becomes pretty much S tier. Gohan becomes S tier. Kale is better in a stack, I would say. Maybe you could say S tier or top of A tier. Let's put an S tier for now. Frieza has all the benefits that he still had in solo, but like in a team, you just don't need Frieza to take down bosses as quickly. And if you're fighting another team, they could just kill Zarbon fairly easily. But he's still pretty good. I would still say Krillin's better. Android 17 would be better than Frieza. 18 is fairly good, but I think she's better solo. Piccolo, I feel, goes up quite a bit. If you're in a team, he's a lot better since you can protect him. Oob becomes fairly better. I would say better than Frieza. Cell becomes really good once you are in a team. Damaku, I feel Damaku goes down a bit. Trunks still is okay. Gammas, I feel like get worse. Vegeta gets better. I feel Vegeta would get better, like A tier. Zamasu in team play probably stays the same. Bojack, he should technically get better with teammates since you would have teams that would play around him, and I feel that he becomes a better character overall. Boo should definitely be better. He's still fairly decent, depending on the team. Like, I think he can help facilitate like Oob and Trunks and stuff like that, or other melee type characters. He becomes a lot stronger, but he still has a lot of weaknesses. Baby becomes like way stronger in team plays. I would say the lifesteal is super strong, especially since the better DPSs are like, or the damages are the Goku's, and he does really well with burst damage. Maybe he would. I don't think he's S tier, but he would definitely be good. It would be easier to do well with Cell. I think Cell is still better overall, but Baby becomes way better in team play. Let's see. Zamasu, yeah, Zamasu is whatever. I think Zamasu's ultimate is very good. Like, his ultimate is very good for team play. It can help facilitate some combos. And I believe his ultimate is better than Vegeta's ultimate. However, Vegeta overall is still a better tank and better team player. And Deborah, well, Deborah is good with baby, and with a team he does well, but I don't know. Deborah with a team, I guess if they deal with Goku's, then he can become a lot better. But is this like Deborah? Is this not very good, man? Even with a coordinated team, like if it's 2 coordinated teams, he probably isn't as good. But if you still have like 1 coordinated team versus an uncoordinated team, I mean, the coordinated team usually wins, right? They should win. But like, Deborah, he just has too many faults, man. He has too many faults. Like, his design overall is thematically awesome, and he has very good tools. It's just, it takes too long for them to apply petrification. So, the Goku's pretty much Z tier in team play. Cooler is super good in team play, but I'm gonna put Cell like up here. I believe Caulifla is really good. I would put Caulifla in A tier for team play. She's still very good, but like the CC that you get from Cooler and Cell is super good. I would say that Baby as a tank would be better than Caulifla. Like solo, Caulifla is better. Baby is good team play though. Hit is very good. I would say Hit is better than Cell. Gohan is very good. Cal's very good. Piccolo, maybe Piccolo would be better in team play since you could protect him. And his, again, special beam cannon is fairly good. Oob is good. I just don't feel like it. Like Piccolo does things that Oob does, but he has more burst. Piccolo has more burst. His ultimate's better. Light grenade's better. His escape is better. I feel Piccolo's is like better than Oob in like every way. Krillin is very good. Android 17 is good. Maybe I would put Vegeta like above Frieza. I think Frieza's still very good. It's just like if both teams are like fighting for bosses, like Frieza loses a ton of value if both teams are very coordinated. Frieza thrives off your opponents just like not going on bosses and not attacking his skills. If you kill his summons, then like Frieza does pretty much nothing. Like I would actually put Frieza like in B, like low B. 18, I think 18 is still pretty strong, but she might go in B actually. Like I would actually say in team play she'd get way weaker because they would just play around 18, and she straight up loses to Cooler, to my knowledge. Trunks should be better in team play. Damaku weaker. Yeah, this is pretty much the team. So if you have a squad, you're duo, trio, quad stacking, like a full stack, this would be the tier list for full stacking. Fairly different than the other one. Like major differences. Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Goku goes up. Hit goes up a ton. Caulifla goes down a whole tier. Bojack goes up a whole tier. Frieza goes down a tier. Vegeta goes up 2 tiers. Piccolo goes up 2 tiers. Like, there's a difference between solo and team play. Once people know what they're doing and there's coordination, there's a major difference in how the characters function. But yeah, this is my tier list. We had 2 tier lists. The second tier list went by way faster, but once I broke down the first components, I feel that the second one went by faster. But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking by. I do appreciate y'all watching and listening. If you have any comments, if you agree or disagree, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me your takes. Tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Tell me some text, like some gameplay I may not know about that may make a character better. I've definitely learned a lot reading and discussing with other people. So let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching and have a good day. Take care. Peace.